In this tutorial, I want to demonstrate how to integrate unit tests with Combine framework, because there's not a lot of resources for this, and especially for unit tests, which are already not the most favorite thing for most people. It's a bit hard to find good techniques for this, so I will try to show you what I came up with in the end, and some of the operators that come in handy, how to do dependency injection. I will continue working on a project that I used for another tutorial, and you can find a link in the description for the other tutorial and also for the source code. So I have here this application where I am having a view model image collection fetcher. Inside I use Combine and URLSession data task publisher to fetch some images. So in the beginning, when I show this view the first time, it directly loads these 3 images. If the user taps on one of these images, it's going to load more images inside a combined data stream with a nested publisher and flat map. I already talked about error handling, but I would also, especially for the errors, I would like to be able to test this to make it a little bit more predictable what's happening. So if I go now in the image collection fetcher, where I have my data streams, before I can test this, I need to make sure I can run repeatable tests or reliable tests. If I have a look at my data stream, all the operators that are there, like compact map, I don't want to test the operators, I want to test my flow. For example, I want to make sure that the images I fetch are really at the property that I'm saying, which is this at published var images, which is a array of images. So I want to know if I fetch something, is it there? If I ask to fetch more images, do I have more images? So all of the operators I don't want to test, I just want to know if my things go in the place they are supposed to. And I'm looking for stuff that might not be repeatable. In this case, I already took something out of this class, which is the URLSession data task publisher. So in the flat map, I create a nested publisher stream with URLSession data task publisher. So if I go into this, have a look at this fetch function, this is using a URLSession data task publisher, and that can return me something different every time. So this is definitely not what I want to use for my tests. So I want to mock these fetches, and since I already extracted the URLSession data task publisher in another file, this is really handy because now I can, instead of injecting here this API resources, I can inject my mock service. So first I need to create a protocol as a type for both the real fetches and for the service, for the mock. So I'm going to, in this folder, in this group, create another group because it's getting a little bit too much. So this is my services. So the first one we already started with is the API resources, and now I need to create here a protocol. So this is a Swift file. This is my data provider. This is a protocol. Data provider. Since I want to use the function to create my publisher, I want to mock this. This is the function I want to have in here. So this is this fetch from URL, returning any publisher of type data and my own arrow type. Which I have to. So first, because I use here any publisher, I need to import Combine, and I think I need to change my arrow type because I'm not in this file anymore. So right now I only have this one function that I need to mock, but you might have more to add. So now my API resources needs to conform to data provider. Now I need to properly inject this protocol. So in my image collection fetcher, in the initializer, I need to inject this. So this is my API resource. Now I'm using my protocol, which is the data provider, and I'm going to initialize this per default with my proper running service of API resources. So I need to store this somewhere, and I'm going to rewrite here this property with this API resources. So this is var of type data provider. So in my initializer, I'm going to give it this API resource, this data provider. So now I can also my test inject this. So we have set everything up for running these tests properly, by making sure we don't have the unpredictable URL session anymore. So I'm going to add here my test, adding a new unit test target. For my test class, I need to have a mock service, so I'm going to create here a new group in my test folder, which is services. And I need to create something similar to API resources that conforms to data provider. So my services in my test group, I'm adding a new file. Is it a Swift file? This is my API mock resource. So this is a struct API mock resource. And I said the reason why I want to have this is so it conforms to my data provider protocol. For this I also need combine, and I need to use here some images, so I need either UIKit or SwiftUI. The function that I have to include here that is required with this data provider protocol is this fetch function. So I need to implement a version of this here by mocking it. I don't even care about the URL. So now I need to return here a publisher that returns me a data. So I'm just going to use a system icon to create the data format. So this is data, UI image, system name plus, and I'm using here the PNG data. Now I can return a just publisher by just publishing my data and force unwrapping it here. This is my test, so if this is crashing, it's only me who's seeing this. Since I have here any publisher, I need to make sure I type erase any publisher. Now I see here my types don't match because my failure types my never. So what I return here has a failure type of never, and I'm expecting here my own error type, so I need to set the failure type. And we can use here set failure type operator to use my own error. So this one, .self. So we have now prepared one very easy fake publisher, which I can now use for my tests. In the test suite, I'm just going to delete this. Since I need to work with combine, I'm going to import this, combine, and I need to also include my project. So add testable, import, transforming project. So I definitely need to create some subscriptions, subscript, to check the outcome. So I can subscribe to some of my publisher in my view model. This is a set of any cancelable. And I want to make sure that in the teardown, I'm clearing all of my subscription, which means that all of my data streams are finished. So I'm setting here my subscriptions to an empty set again. So now I can start writing my first test. Test loading images at launch. So I want to now write a test because when I launch my application the first time it runs, I have this data stream in my initializer that I set up to fetch my images, and I'm already sending free URLs to fetch the images from. So I want to make sure that I'm really actually seeing these images. So let's going to see what we are testing. First, I need to create an instance of my fetcher. This is an image collection fetcher. And for the resource, I need to now use my mock service. So this is my mock. This is my API mock resource. In the beginning, I don't have any images. You can test this. xct assert equal, so I know that my fetcher's images count should be 0. Starting with no images. We want to check now if this images array is built up one by one, or if I get them in the data stream. So I want to subscribe to my images, to the publisher of my images. I have to do it like this because the images are used here at publish, so that's why the $sign. So now I can have here a sync with completion value. So I don't have a failure in my stream, that's why you see here never. But this is not what I wanted to check. I wanted to have a look at my images. So if my images count is equal to 3, Then I want to say that everything is fine. So since this is asynchronously, I need to work here with promises. So let promise expectation loading free images. So when I know I receive your images and I know that I get free, I can say my promise is fulfilled. So now it's telling me it's unused. This is because I need to store the subscription in my subscriptions set here. And now I need to wait for my promise. And 1 second. I can make this really short because the main thing that usually takes time is the URLSession. But since I make this synchronous now, it's running really fast. So this succeeded. You can also try, because I said I'm exactly loading 3, if I put now 4. So when I reach 4 in my stream, which doesn't happen because I never loaded 4. Now it's failing because I did not load enough of my images. Oh, I didn't load 4, I only have 3. In this case, I'm using one of the publishers in my fetcher, so I can subscribe to them and see what's happening, what's passed, what's updated. And when I know I have here 3 images, then I say I'm good. So I'm going to run this again. The next test that I just want to show you is, this is testing having 3 images just at launch. I also want to make sure that when I send more values, from the user initiated, that I get more images. So my test is test loading more images. So I do the same. I have here my mock, but in this case, I'm going to load more images by sending here, and they were this URLs that I had right now is in the URL array. So I'm sending here now the 3rd and the 4th. So we could now do the same, but I will show you, that's also the other reason I wanted to show you a little bit more sophisticated way of working with this publisher streams. So I'm going to again subscribe to my fetcher's images. So first of all, this is already called and for the initial value, which is an empty array, which I don't really care about. So you can use here one operator like drop first. So this is really dropping the first value. You can also use drop while. Maybe you want to drop until you have something. So, for example, my images in, I want to drop until my count is 0. So once I have here values, then I'm going to pass them down. So I'm just going to take this one, comment one of these out, because now they would actually do the same. Since I said I want to check how many values are in there, in case you want to have specifically one value in the stream, you can use output. So output add means the 4th value in the stream, or the 4th time something is passed in the stream, I want to have this. Or in, this is the range, like I want to have the, similar to what I did with drop first, the range from 1 to 5. So this would give me this would exclude the 0 one and finish the stream after it has 5 values to publish. You can also collect values. So this is a little bit different. So you can collect all of them. This will only publish it when the stream finishes, but this is not going to finish. But you can say, I want to bunch up my first 5 values that I receive here. So the difference between these two, this is giving publishes one array of past values, and the output is publishing them one by one, publishes 5 values one by one. You can also test this if you have here a sync. So this is an array of arrays. So this is only because I'm building, maybe I should have showed you this. In my image collector, after I fetch my images, I also use here a scan. I use a scan operator to take these images one by one and collect them in one array. So you start with having one image, then you have an image of array of 2, 3, 4, 5. So we can check if we actually collect this. Here, this is all my results. So first I should actually check if my results count is exactly 5. So if I'm actually only passing here 5 values, except the first empty one. And if the results last sub-arrays count is actually 5. So if the last time I'm passing anything here has 5 images. And then I need to have again a promise loading 5 images, and I can, when I have this here, when I know that I have enough values passed, I can say my promise is fulfilled. I need to store this in my subscriptions, and I again need to wait for this promise. So this is working fine. If you want to, this kind of checking here, if I actually have one array with 5 elements, I don't need to do that in the sync. I can use another operator which contains. I can check if this one thing that I'm looking for actually ever passes. So for example, I can check if this data stream actually contains this value that I'm specifying here. So I could, for example, say I have an array of images, or of this specific image, which I didn't work with here. This is one value you can check if it ever passes or contains where. So I can investigate what is passed in my stream. This is now complaining because the output of this container is a Boolean value. So this is not working. So this is my images. And I can say my images count should be 5. So in this case, I can use sync to give me my value. And I can now say my promise is fulfilled. The reason why this is now working is this contains only fires in 2 occasions. That's a bit of a trick with these operators. It only fires if this condition is once fulfilled, because this is the reason. If it's finding one value that it's fulfilled, then it sends a true. And as long as the date, if this is not happening, it never happens, it's still waiting, because your data stream keeps on, it could still publish values, so it doesn't know if maybe it will be true in the future, it doesn't know, so it's going to wait. The only other time when it knows this is not happening is when your data stream completes. But I didn't do that here. I assume that my data stream should actually not complete. So now this should actually still work. So we still have one value that has this 5 elements. You can, if you try here 6 again, this is not going to happen. And it fails, so I'm going to put this back to 5. You don't need to use this special operators, but sometimes, especially if you want to build very sophisticated checks, then you need to do this, and you can only have one of them, because afterwards is the true or false, which means that you might need to subscribe to the same publisher multiple times. So this contains, if you want to make sure that all of your values satisfy a condition, you can use the all satisfy operator. No, I have to, it's not going to give me the right one. First I need to uncomment here this contains and use all satisfy. So in this case you can also investigate all of the values, these images arrays that are passed in my stream, to check if all of them have a certain, fulfill a certain condition. For example, in this case, I'm pretty I hope, I mean this is not a normal test, that my count should always be larger than 0. Because I should always have some images in there. This is not for testing because you can still erase things. This is probably not production important. Just want to show you that we can test all, make sure that all of them are working. And now this is failing because I never actually made this pass. So with this all satisfy, you have to be smarter in the way you're structuring your condition. This is not working right now for me. For what I wanted to test, I'm going to use the contains again. I need to work a little bit with negatives. If you are interested in investigating and checking what's in your data streams, you should have a look at this kind of operators like collect. Just going to open the developer documentation. Under combine, under publishers, you have the full list of all these operators. So you have the map stuff, the filter. Maybe you want to filter. There's also another option to filter out things that you don't want to investigate in. Then you have collect. To collect, that's what we had. Reduce, counting. This is a bit tricky because it depends a little bit on to complete the data streams. Then this was the one that I talked about. Contains a value, where, or satisfy, drop. This is the prefix, getting the first couple of them. The first values where a condition is fulfilled. The output at. So there's quite a few very useful ones that can help you to write tests. I didn't realize for most of the running application I don't find them so useful, but seeing them for the test is actually quite nice. Now that I wrote 2 tests for the code I already have, I said I want to maybe improve a little bit my error handling. So I'm just going to go back in my fetcher to show you this. So I have here in my flat map the fetching these images can throw an error. And right now I'm dealing with this by simply catching them and returning an empty array, but I would like to maybe show the user the error. In order to do this, I need to have another property in here, similar to my add published var error message. This is a string, optional, nil. So I want to put this information there, and I need to hack into this data stream. And this is some kind of side effect. And for this, I'm using handle events. And you see we get a lot of information. And the one I care about is just the receive completion, because this is where I get the error. I'm going to delete. I'm only keeping this one. So I'm getting here the completion. And the error is in the failure case. So this is an enum. Switch completion case failure let error. So my self.error message is getting now the error's localized description. In case I'm normally finished, I'm not doing anything. Just to make sure, because I didn't finish my error handling, my own error. In my IPO sources, I started writing this. So I also need to have here a property localized. This is a string, which I use for my user, return something went wrong. So we can check if we see this message coming up, which in case of any error, I'm going to put on my error message here. You can obviously have more useful error messages and check the cases for your errors. So now I want to test this, but if you have a look at our test, I'm right now only able to test with this mock the good case and not the bad case, which is kind of a bummer. One very nice solution for tests is to use the Swift result type. So I'm going to have here a property result. This is a result where I can have to decide what kind of types I want to show. So in this case, I'm working here with data and this arrow. So it's basically this types. Now I have a result, but I need to have a publisher. The Apple developers were so smart to also include an easy way of creating a publisher from a result. So I'm going to comment this out so you see all of these different implementations. In here, now I can say my results and ask for the publisher. This is now a result publisher, which means that I have to here use erased any publisher. So this is it. We have now a way of mocking our errors and of our data. I really like the solution and I didn't really see it anywhere else. So I hope this is also helpful for you. If you didn't know about the results type, I strongly encourage you to have a look at this result type. Now in my test suite, I can write another test, which is error message. So I need to here create another of my, I think it's not going to work with the other ones now because I didn't change this here. It is probably going to tell me now. Yes, because it misses here a result. So basically I need to now always, every time I'm using this, give it one. I need to get another data, which I here created from an image. So I'm going to have here some lazy properties to easier work with this. So this is a lazy var mock image. This is a UI image, and this is what I'm using here, my system icon. I'm returning here this system icon because I don't really mind what kind of images I work with. And then I need to have also a mock data. This is a data. And I'm simply using my mock image as the PNG data. Both of these cases I'm using here force unwrapping, but I don't really, this is not a problem because it will only crash on me, which I'm the only one working on this test. So I don't really need to be super careful if my own user experience is not so good. So anyway, now I have something that I can give here, my mock service. And I can say, in this case, it's a success of my mock data that I wanted to test. So I guess I'm also doing that for the other one. It's the same. And now here for my testing error, I need to also have this mock, but in this case I use a failure of my own error. So I'm just using the bad response with an error status code of 400. So I again have to have my fetcher with this result. So now we need to check that we should not have ever an image actually loading. So if I subscribe again to my images fetchers, if I here receive an image, I should raise an fail, should not have images, and I should filter out the images that the empty images, the empty arrays of images. So images in. So I'm only passing values that have a count of higher than 0. Then I'm going to raise this exception. I need to store this in my subscriptions. But the actual thing I want to test in here is that my error message changes. So we need to check the fetcher's error message. That because it's an optional error, initialized with null, so it should be at some point become not null. And I'm going to filter out the not null values. So this is my error. Or what did I use for this? Yes, it's an optional string. So I need to filter out that my error message is not null. So I'm only letting values pass that are not null. And then when I receive this in the sync message, I know that now I have here something that I wanted. So again, I need to use the promise. Let promise is a expectation should get error message. So when I receive this in my sync, I can say promise is fulfilled. And again, I need to wait like before. And I need to store this in my subscriptions. This was one of the problems I had because I was like, why is it always failing, until I realized I just forgot to store my subscription. A small but very important thing to not fail. So it's fulfilled. You can also check all of them at the same time. So we know that nothing goes wrong here. You can also test here different kinds of errors in this API service, because I have here, for example, a catch operator where I might want to recover in different ways. Maybe I want to have a different image, or I want to replace it with this image. So you can also check this kind of things depending on what error you had, what was the recovery strategy that you expected. Where's your data going? So it's not about testing operators. It's about how did you set up your flow? Does it go where you expected? Do you have as many values as they expect? Especially if you have a failure, maybe you want to check if you have a failure in this case that you don't complete. The signal that we would see is we need to check this data stream that is not completed. So this is these value that we would need to hack into. So for example, I guess one way is to have a separate property that we just use for testing. And in case it's really completed, that we can recreate this data stream. Not really sure about this, but let's try. At published var fetcher is active. So I need to have this at published to have a publisher to check in my test. This is a bool, and this is true. So when here in my data stream I'm finishing, I'm going to say my fetcher is active is false, which means that I have to use here unowned. I guess the next thing would be to test memory cycles. So now we need to make sure that we never complete. So we can, in the test suite, also go and have a look at the fetchers. Fetcher is active, dollar, to have the subscription.sync value. So I only want to get this value if it's actually the false case. So I'm going to filter out is not active. So in this case, I'm going to raise here a xct fail data stream to fetch did complete. And I need to store this in my subscriptions. So what happens if I take the not out? This should then fail. Yes, it does fail because it directly receives the first value. Maybe we can also test this by, just need to check if, because then if I change something in my data stream by not catching the error here. Let's see if everything breaks down or not. Then I need to change my error type here. It's probably not the smartest thing to do. So maybe you don't do it. Just let me struggle. So that's the problem, because the if you change something, the input-output types don't match anymore. Okay, this is fine. So if this completes, it's really bad, and we now should see it if we have our error. So probably if you run this, if you write this the first time, and you pass an error, you can check. And I think now it's the problem of the order, because this promises need to do everything before my promise. Probably have to rework the way I do this. Just going to take the filter out. Let's try drop first. And I have another problem. Here, putting this, I need to do this, setting my error on the main thread. Dispatch queue.main.async. So. And I think this was also the problem, because I was still doing this on the background thread. Some weird things. I'm not really sure. So now, if I have here an error, you see it's because I didn't catch it. My failure is I see my failed coming up. So maybe I go back to this one, filtering out the two values. But it still failed at the same position, which is good. So this is the case when you didn't take care of your errors. You should see that your stream's completed. So now I go back in my image collector, and I'm adding here again my error handling. This way around it did. And then here I can say I never have an error. So then in my test suite, this test error should not pass again, because I did catch my error in the right position. And this is actually happening multiple times. So I'm only, because I'm here raising errors for all 3 images that I'm loading. So I'm just going to get the first value. So I'm waiting until I have a inactive data stream signal, and then I only take the first. So only the first is passed, and only the first is raising here a fail. This is actually from this. So it's the same for this one sync, and only take the first. So now I really only have this one time, and this one also one time. I'm not really sure if this is the best way of checking that your data streams never complete in case you have errors. Maybe there's a more elegant way of doing this, but at least I have now one test that can remind me of this very important problem if it occurs. This was a short introduction to running tests with Combine. So the main things is to work with this dependency injection for things that you might want to mock. And using this very nice trick of the results publisher to test errors and good cases, good paths. The other thing that you should keep in mind is you have to subscribe to the publishers to see because you want to see what's updated, what's happening, if things go where you want them to go. Might it be data your images or errors. And it's a good idea to be familiar with this kind of how long your data streams are alive, getting a little bit a hang of some of these very useful operators like filter, collect, contain, all satisfy, drop. Just have a look at the documentation and start using them. Just make sure you understand that some of them pass only a value when the data stream completes. So you have to test the negative cases too. You have to also be able to test the negative cases. But I think once you have just this mock service with your publishers, it's already a lot easier. And please don't test combine operators, because this is not your job. Try to test how you set up your data flow. Let me know if you think you're now able to write unit tests with combine, or you have no actually idea how to do this. And in case this is true, then give this video a like. Until next time, happy coding.